Welcome, everybody, on this rainy Tuesday. We needed the rain anyway, at least in my house. Okay, most importantly, first of all, if anybody wants some free honey bottles and did not get a raffle ticket, raise your hand and Melissa will come around here and raise them up real high. Get them high. There you go. Okay, cool. All right, a few announcements that I have. First of all, we've got the Corey Stevens queen rearing class. Still have a few openings left for that if you're interested in that. It's a full course on raising queens. There will be some hands-on. You will actually be getting into the frames and all that good stuff. So it's a little bit of, well, a lot of teaching and a lot of hands-on stuff. So that will be at the Dealman Recreation Complex in Creve Coeur on July 26th from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. So a full day of that. Now our extravaganza is coming up. So we've got 3 slots that are open for individuals up to 4 supers. So it does cost $20 for up to 4 supers. So 3 left. That's on the 19th of July. What is it, 8 to 3 or those, but you gotta sign up for a specific time slot for that, all right? And we will be sending out some specific information about what you need to do getting your bees out. Just make sure there's no bees in the supers when you bring them. Okay, well, you laugh. That wasn't a joke. So you need to do that, but you need to get them, when you take them off, make sure you don't just set them in your driveway for a day or two, because the honey will be gone. It will be extracted for you, okay? So a few other things. You need to bring buckets for your honey, maybe a plastic Ziploc bag for wax cappings if you want to keep the wax. But everything else will be supplied. We'll have 3 electric motorized extractors. We'll have the uncapping stations. We'll have knives. We'll have spatulas. We'll have filters. We've got all that. We're supplying all of that. But you do make sure you bring some buckets, because otherwise we're keeping your honey. I'm kidding. Buckets are $25 a piece, though, if you do need one of ours. I'm kidding. God, you guys are so serious. Beekeepers are so serious. Okay, so that is July 19th from 8 to 3 at the Tri-County Senior Center at 800 West Union Pacific, Missouri. So if you do not have honey this year, you can certainly come and see how it's all done. Come and talk to beekeepers and all that good stuff, see what you need to do to extract your honey. You do not have to register. You can come anytime you want. Also, if any experienced beekeepers want to help, you can also come anytime you want. You do not have to register if you're just coming to help or observe. So we're going to be there from 7 to 4. That's going to include some setup time and some cleanup time at the end, because we go from 8 to 3. If anybody wants to come and help set up or tear down, we could appreciate the help as well. Anybody got any questions on the extravaganza or anything with that? Okay. Open apiary days, July 12th and July 26th. There's been a lot of you taking advantage of that. That's a good thing. Able to talk to experienced beekeepers, actually get in the hives. Sometimes you don't know what the heck you're looking at, and you need somebody to maybe point that out for you. So they certainly can help you with that. Great Plains Master Beekeeping Open Apiary is on Sunday, July 23rd at the Isabee's Beekeeping, Ken Heidkamp, who was going to make a presentation for us tonight about submitting entries for the state fair with the hive products. But he is actually going to, I'll be with you in a second. He'll actually is taking his master beekeeping cert from Great Plains for his face-to-face oral present or question and answer and defending his thesis and all that good stuff. So we wish him luck on that tonight. But he leads that class down there. So you've got somebody who is definitely a good beekeeper, unless of course he fails that test. And then we'll have to talk to him about leading the Great Plains Master beekeeping thing. I'm kidding. You had a for which event? Yeah, open apiaries for the club at Danforth Center is July 12 and 26. What time is that? From 11 to 1. That's at the Danforth Center, and it's weather dependent. Usually it's only rain unless it's like, well, I don't even know if they stop for heat. I do. If it's too hot out, I don't go out. For sure. Okay, do what? Bring water, definitely. And you do need, if you're a new beekeeper or not a beekeeper, I mean, you can still go, but you do have to have at least a veil on your protection. Okay, and then the state fair. We've got the state fair coming up on August the 8th. It starts August 8th to the 17th. That's in Sedalia. And we need some volunteers to help with the Missouri State Fair booth where they sell a lot of hive products. So if you're able to do that, we have 2 shifts. I think it's from 10 to 10:30 to 2:30, and then from 2:30 to 6:30. So if you're able to do, it's fun. A lot of people, you can talk about bees, you get a free ice cream. So that's always good. You do have to pay to get in, okay, to the fair, but you will be reimbursed the entrance fee to get, once you can turn in that receipt and they will reimburse you for the entry costs. Sign up on our website. You don't sign up on the Missouri State Beekeepers site. You sign up on our site for either one of those shifts. We would appreciate the help. And also you will be entered into a drawing for a swarm trap. How about that? All sorts of motivating factors here for you. We are also looking for some people to take a ride down there when the fair is over. Because when you enter your products, the products have to stay from for the entire fair because the products and the ribbons are being displayed. So the only time you can bring them back is when the fair is over, which is like 6 o'clock on the 17th of August. So we're looking for a volunteer or 2 to take a ride down there, get all the bottles and the ribbons and all that good stuff. We will provide you mileage and a meal. If you could help us out with that, that would be, and it's really kind of almost a 2-person job, by the way. Because you're pulling bottles and you're putting them back in boxes and you're keeping track of who's who and who got what. So it's helpful if we could have a couple volunteers to take a ride down there. We'd appreciate that. Let me know, or Melissa or Tom or Janet or somebody, that you're willing to do that. Okay, workshop 2026 and banquet is on the calendar. So anybody remember when that is? We mentioned it last month. Okay, I got $100 for anybody who. Okay, that is February. I'm sorry. No, no. Now, see, you owe me now, so. Okay, so no, that's February 20th. We usually do it like the second week or so, but that falls on Valentine's Day, and we know how much beekeepers love each other, and they like to go out to dinner and all that good stuff. So it is the Friday, the 20th, February 20th, and then that's the banquet. We also have some things going on that Friday evening as well. And then the main workshop will be on Saturday. So mark your calendars for that. We're doing it again at Sunset Hills. We think it's a good venue. We did read every exit survey. And so we made some changes to help facilitate some of the issues that we did have. And we're adding some things. We want to make this better for you all. So mark your calendars for February 20 and 21. I think that's all is there any, we've got our picnic coming up too, by the way, September 9, I think it is. Yes. Okay, cool. September 9, that's it. I can never pronounce the name of that park. Enemeger, okay. And so just mark that date too, February 9th. Everything's free. We provide all the food and utensils, desserts, and all that good stuff. We will ask you to bring, we provide all the meat and all that good stuff, the protein, whatever. And then we'll ask people to bring a side dish or a dessert or anything like that. We'll have a honey exchange, so keep that in mind as well. We will have mead and then more mead. So if you're a mead maker and you want people to sample your mead, bring some mead. All right, I think that's all I have. Like I said, Ken was going to make a presentation about entering your hive products, but Melissa is going to take care of that for him. So she's going to do that. And then after that, I will come and introduce our speaker for the evening. Yes. Oh, it's the 7th, September 7th, Sunday, from 2 to 4 or noon to 4, something like that. It's on the website. Everything I've talked about tonight is on the website. I should have just let it roll up here and shut up and let you guys read, but okay. I think they're done with me, or I'm done.
I know everybody in this room is planning on entering the honey show. So this is Ken's presentation. So I'm just going to go through his slides for you guys. If you've never entered a honey show, it's not that complicated. It is a bit time consuming, but it's really fun to compete against your fellow beekeepers and win something and say, my stuff's better than yours. Or when as a club, we just win more stuff than Three Rivers or Jeffco or, something like that. So it's all friendly competition and whatnot, but I don't know, I enjoy it. And when you enter honey shows, different honey shows have different rules. So always make sure that you read the rules top to bottom so you understand exactly what you're getting into. I don't have a clicker. Is there a clicker? So this picture is actually from NABI, the North American Honeybee Exposition, which is hosted by Cayman and Laurel Reynolds in Louisville, Kentucky. It is the nation's largest beekeeping convention and honey show. There's over 4,000 people that attended last year. There was over 1,000 entries in this honey show. Ken entered this show. I entered this show. Rick, is Rick here tonight? Did Rick enter that show? Michael Godfrey entered the show. We have plenty of people in the club that entered the show, and Ken took home photography ribbons. I took home a couple of ribbons for a few different things. It's a lot of fun. And the thing about honey shows is it's not necessarily, not that it's not about the honey, because it is, but a lot of the categories are about presentation. So you really have to be particular about your jars and your packaging and the quality of your honey and how it looks. Let's see. So this is backing up, but this is the, because this is honey from all across the United States, and even some people internationally will bring their honey to compete also. And this particular show, you had to bring, for each category, you had to bring 3 jars of honey. So there's just all plethora of colors and whatnot. And you see here how they have it all set up, 3 jars. So this is from the state honey show. And this is just kind of the ribbons that people won, their jars. At the state show, I think you also had to submit 3 jars per extracted honey category. And the state show, they do it differently too, where you can enter as an individual, or you can enter things into the club category. So you can just enter it under your name, but for the EMBA. So you can do it either way. This is a little write-up about Ken's winning his ribbons at NABI, through the state fair. So here's some guidelines when you're entering the honey show. Read all the rules for the show. Again, all shows have very different rules. The requirements, because it's a different judging companies that judge NABI than will judge the state fair. So there's different requirements, different judging standards, different judging rules. For example, at NABI, there may be first, second, third, fourth, fifth place, but unless you meet these specific standards, there may not be anybody that wins first or second place. Where at the state fair, there's going to be a first, second place, third place winner. So it's definitely different standards at different shows and different ways of judging also. Number 2, make sure you know the deadlines of when your entries need to be delivered and picked up. So we'll get into it a little bit further. I think Missouri State, Ken takes everything down for us because it has to be there at the day before the fair opens, I think, because they judge it that following day. And everybody just drops everything at his house, which is in Oakville, and he takes everything down for everybody. So you don't have to worry about taking your stuff down to Sedalia, even if you want to enter. You don't have to attend the state fair at all. You just have to get your stuff to Ken so he can take it to Sedalia for you. Have all your equipment ready for each category you plan to enter. So I personally will go through the rules and see what categories I want to enter, what equipment is required, like what specific bottles, or containers are needed, and I'll order that ahead of time so that I already have that prepped and ready to go to get my entries filled, and fill out the entry form completely and make sure that you have the correct class for your entries. So the state fair, there'll be an entry form and you'll just check off what particular categories you're going to enter. And again, make sure you have that fully filled out. I know on the state form, I think it does ask, I don't remember if it might be your social security number. I can't remember, because if you win, there's a monetary payout that goes to you, and it's all run through the state. So they have to know if you won that $5 for tax purposes. Missouri State Fair entry form is now online, but you can still use the paper form. They have different deadline dates, so follow the rules. The form is really hard to find online. I feel like I'm almost positive Ken has the exact web address in here for the form. So just hold on. If not, I'll try to look it up back there when I get done. And if at the end of the talk, you guys can come see me and I'll get it to you. Some shows have entry fees, but others don't. NABI does not have an entry fee. State fair, every class that you enter is $1. So it's not an exorbitant fee, but it is a fee. So make sure that you send that money. If you fill out the paper form, bring that to Ken's house with the money for Ken. If you do it online, you can obviously pay online, I'm sure. How he says Nabi right there. Don't be afraid to enter your honey products, as you may be surprised that you can still place. So for an example, Rick Athol, is Rick here tonight? I don't think he's here. He did cut comb honey. He's a newer beekeeper, did cut comb honey for the very first time last year and entered it into the state fair. It was absolutely beautiful. He won first place. He absolutely deserved to win first place. He didn't expect to win anything because he'd never done it before. It was amazing. He did a great job. I have entered things that I absolutely knew weren't going to place, but I enter them anyway because a lot of these honey shows, they'll give you feedback of what you can do to make your entry better. So next time I know what I need to do to improve this entry so I can hopefully place next time. I've done that several times with wax blocks at Nabi, just so I can get that feedback. So the feedback is really what I want when I'm entering things that I know I don't have a chance of winning it. Okay, so these are some of the rules. It's under the apiculture, rules and regulations. So if you go to the Missouri State Fair website, this is the heading that you're going to want to look for. Apiculture, rules and regulations. Entry fee, I'm not going to go over all this. We'll be here forever and then Kent won't get to talk and we'll borrow him here for no reason. So these are just some of the rules. Entries will be released at 6 p.m. Sunday, August 17th. So again, like Dan said, we need someone to go up to Sedalia to pick all these up for us and bring them home. Let's see if it says, ship to the grounds no later than 3 p.m. August 4th. So I'm sure Ken is gonna want them probably by the 2nd, the 3rd or the 2nd at least, so he can make sure everything gets packed up in his truck to get it down there. So we'll confirm that and we'll get that in an email and whatnot, that so everybody knows exactly when they need to get that to Ken. Does anybody need me to stay on the slide any longer? So this is an example of what a extracted honey entry looks like. These are queen line jars. They're glass. You can get them from Jane at Isabee's. So if you're entering extracted honey, typically this is the type of jar that they want it in. And you can see these are the, I think these are supposed to be the 3 different classes: light, medium extracted, and dark extracted. So Division A, bee culture. So here's some of the different categories that you can enter in. Cut comb, round comb honey, which would be like Ross rounds, bulk honeycomb, extracted honey, light, amber, dark, sealed honey. So that's brood size frame. So that's just a frame of capped honey. Sealed honey white. Oh, so this is a brood frame. That's a shallow frame. Candied honey is actually creamed honey. Why they call it candied honey, we have no clue. But it's creamed honey. If anybody wants to enter creamed honey, it's creamed honey. And then of course there's beeswax categories. Yellow beeswax. So you can see too, it's 3 pounds. At Nabi, there's a 1 pound, there's a 5 pound, there's a couple different classes. For State Fair, it's 3 pounds. Queen of bees. There's also an observation hive category. So these are the points that you get for different, oh my gosh, the words, thank you. The moisture levels, that's what I was looking for. State Fair does different points for different moisture levels. So you really have to check your moisture of your honey, because depending on your moisture level, you get a different amount of points for your extracted honey. You can't have any crystals in it. It needs to be completely clean. You don't want any bee parts in it, no foam. You got to clean all that foam off. They will check the flavor and the aroma. I think the flavor part is mostly just to make sure it's not fermented, not necessarily if they like the taste of your honey. Because when they do a taste competition, that's called black jar honey. That way they don't see it at all. It goes on total taste. And then there is color, appearance, and suitability of the container, meaning you have the right container. And then the accuracy and uniformity of volume, meaning you have to get it at the correct fill level. So I thought maybe you have a picture there. So the fill level in a clean line jar, I know he has a picture later on, is there's a ring around the top of the rim, and then there's your thread rings. You need to have that honey no higher or no lower than that ring right there. You cannot see any light through that ring. If you have it higher or lower, you're gonna get points counted off. Art design beeswax molded. So last year, I think there was somebody did a mold of the United States. It was really cool. Beeswax candles, there's all kinds of different candles that you can do also. And again, it has a certain length requirement and 6 candles. Honey group competition. This is where I was saying that you can enter items not on your own, but through the EMBA. And this is what we need to do to beat Jeffco and Three Rivers. This is what cut comb looks like, and Rick's looked much better than this. Don't tell Ken I said that. Comb honey, sealed honey frame, uniformity, absence of uncapped cells. So all the cells need to be capped. Absence of watery cappings. So watery cappings means, you see how those cappings are all nice and white? So watery cappings are when the cappings are right on top of the honey. This shows there's an airspace between the capping and the honey. When the cappings are dark, it just means that the bees capped it right on top of the honey, and those are called watery cappings. It's not necessarily that there's water in them, they're just right on top of the honey. But it doesn't present as well. Cleanliness of section and or frame, just how nicely it's cut. Freedom of granulation and pollen, so you don't want any of those cells to have pollen. You don't want the honey to have started to granulate. If you're gonna do cut comb, the best way to keep it from granulating, cut it, let it drain, put it in the freezer. Uniformity of weight, so sometimes you need to submit so many pieces, they all need to be the same weight. The total weight of entry, sometimes it has to be a certain weight, so. This is called chunk comb honey. So there's a chunk of honey, honeycomb in there covered by liquid honey, runny honey. It needs to be a certain size. The jar needs to be a certain size. Again, you just have to read the rules. And certain jars also. Neatness of cut. Again, you don't want any ragged edges. They need to be really nice cuts. No watery cappings. How clean the product is. They don't want any drippy, well, that's on cut comb honey, any drippy honey, because there'd be drippy honey all over the chunk comb. Density, flavor, all that stuff. Volume, again, with the chunk comb honey, it needs to be filled to a certain weight or certain volume. This is the candied honey or the creamed honey. Color, by color, they mean they just want it the same color throughout. They don't want striations of lighter and darker and all that. Crystallization with creamed honey, you want it really smooth. You don't want to be able to feel any crystals on your tongue. You want it to kind of feel like butter. Firmness of set, you don't want it runny, but you don't want it super hard either. It needs to be able to be spread. This is the beeswax blocks. And let me tell you, this is about how many beeswax blocks I poured to enter Nabi before I finally got 2 that I thought were good enough to enter. The beeswax takes some time. Again, it's all about color. It needs to be clean of any impurities, no cracks. You don't want it dipping, nothing like that. And it needs to have a good, clean smell to it. Bees in an observation hive. So this is just a frame of bees. You want the queen on it. You want brood of all stages. If you can get that nice honey rainbow at the top with pollen, and you want to show as much as you can in one frame. And that'll be up there all week. So, and bees are taken care of while you're up there. People from MSDA take care of those observation hives. So if you're going to send an observation hive, don't worry that, oh, there goes that hive, I'm losing that queen. No, it'll be fed and taken care of. Uniform in color, size, correct. There needs to be a queen, brood, variety, presence of queen, workers, drones, brood, honey, pollen, da, da, da. Cleanliness, so you don't want to take just an old crummy frame. Make sure it's a nicer frame. And a well-populated frame. Art design and beeswax. Again, they want it really bright yellow if you can get it. Clean, novelty, mold, or sculpture. So it can be carved beeswax, it can be molded beeswax, anything like that. Here are some hand-dipped beeswax candles. I've not made those take forever, and I'm not that patient. Again, color, cleanliness, no cracking or shrinking, all of that. This is about that fill line and the extracted honey. It's the raised ridge, not the jar is completely parallel at the bottom. Liquid honey in a circular shape forms concave surface. I'll tell you a trick. So I fill mine to just below the fill line. And then I take a, like a medicine plunger and suck some honey into it and then start squirting the honey in until I get it to the exact place that I want to. So it's the exact level. Don't tell anybody I told you that. So that's what I was talking about. There's the fill ring and there's the threads. There cannot be any daylight going above that fill line. And no honey can be above that fill line either. Another important thing is none of that can be sticky either. So you need to make sure you really meticulously wipe that all down. Any fingerprints on the glass, wipe it down. If there's foam on the inside of that, get some plastic wrap, put it on there, pull it up. The plastic wrap should bring the foam up too. Here's the jars I was talking about. So they're both called queen line jars. One is wider opening and one is a more narrow opening. The wider ones show honey much better because more light can get in them, but they're impossible to find. The other thing about your jars is you want to pick jars. Like when I go to Isabee's and I get, for a honey show competition, get a box of jars, I go through all of them because you want jars that don't have bubbles in them, don't have any streaks in them, things like that. Nowadays, judges aren't as particular. I know Nabi doesn't count off for that unless it's just a really horrible jar. Just because of how glass is manufactured now, it's hard to keep all the bubbles out. But some judging companies, they're really stringent about no bubbles in the jar. The glass has to be perfectly clear. You know, there can't be any imperfections in the jar whatsoever. So just make sure you check your jars. So this is not last year, the year before, the group of us that went to Nabi from the St. Louis area. Ken's back there next to Tom and Michael, Casey, Jane, Melissa, me, Donna, Dan. It was fun. So yeah, if you get a chance to go to Nabi, you should do it. It's so much fun. There's a lot to see. This is the photography category at Nabi that Ken won second place on. And here's a picture of all the photography. Well, not all of it, but some of it. And then this is about the Great Plains Master Beekeeping Program that we actually have an open apiary. It's this Sunday at Isabee's. And you do not have to want to get your Master Beekeeping certification to join this. Everybody's welcome. They would like you to at least enroll in it, but you don't have to, if you don't want to continue in it, you don't have to. And this is just how you get that, all the steps. And I think that's it. Does anybody have any questions? I know you're all super excited and planning in your head what you're going to enter and when you can get started. Does anybody have any questions though? Okay, he didn't have the email address up there, so I'm gonna find that while I'm back there. And if you guys have any questions, just find me. You can also go back there and buy cups and shirts and sign up for memberships and all that stuff. Thank you guys.
Thanks. All righty, thank you, ma'am. Okay, our speaker tonight is Kent Williams. Kent is Are you from Kentucky? Been there all your life? Kentucky-based Certified Master Beekeeper from the Eastern Apicultural Society. He's been beekeeping 30 years, and during that time, he has created the Kent Williams School of Bee, or Bee School, Kent Williams Bee School. He's talked to beekeepers all over the country. He has a lot of beekeeping wisdom that he presents to us in his Kentucky way, which is very down to earth. You might even get a giggle or two. His actual bio on the website is he's best known for his stand-up comedy, but I don't know if that's real or not. So, but he is a very entertaining speaker. He's been here several times already. We always appreciate him. He's a gardener. He helps his neighbors a bit, picks a guitar on his porch, and mentors other fellow beekeepers. So let's welcome Kent Williams tonight.
Some of that may even be true. Yeah, first, I'll say, floor is always open when I'm speaking. If you have a question, I don't care if it's on topic or not. I'll have some sort of an answer, and that may or may not be true also. But, but I'm a convincing liar. I mean, you'll think it's true even if it's not. But seriously, if you have a question, don't hesitate to ask, because I could talk.
This mic pretty good.
I could talk probably all night long about bees and maybe not even get close to the subject that you're interested in, or the question you want answered. And we do have a beekeeper school every spring in April at our farm. It's a hands-on school. You're welcome to camp out on the farm if you want to. We have people every year that do that. There are motels that aren't too far away, and most of them aren't in the police logs that often. So it don't cost anything. We feed real well, and you'll be welcome to come. And it's Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and the program is about the same every day. We cater to the people that come, and if you show up and on Saturday afternoon and want to know how to catch a queen and mark a queen, it doesn't matter if we've done that 4 times already that day, we'll do it a 5th time. We cater to the people that come. We don't want anybody leaving without getting to see what they want to, unless it's just something that we do not have. And then we'll just describe it. I hope that nobody gets to see American foul brood or anything like that. But I'll guarantee there'll be some things going wrong in a few hives, because we usually have 100 to 120 hives on site, and there's bound to be something wrong with one of them. If nothing else, it'll have a bad queen or something. But anyways, this year it's going to be April 23, 24, and 25, and 9 in the morning, 5 in the afternoon. There's no such thing as being too early or staying too long. I live there, so I'll be there. Probably. But I've never ran off yet, but yet, could happen. So show up and enjoy, have fun. And don't think that any question, now you hear this all the time. If you're in a bee club or talking with other beekeepers, especially beekeepers that are young in the craft, they'll say, "This is a stupid question." that no, if you're gonna ask it, it's not the stupid question. The stupid one is the one you should have asked, but you were afraid to. If you ask a question, it doesn't matter how elementary it might be, you can be pretty sure that there's a half dozen other people that really want to know the answer to that, but don't have the nerve to ask it. So if you're at the bee school, ask questions. If you're here, ask questions. I don't really enjoy just a monologue or a lecture. I like a dialogue and to talk with other beekeepers, because chances are I may learn something too. I've given up on learning everything because we had our local beekeepers meeting where I live last night, and there was one gentleman that came by and he said, "Well, what do you know?" And I said, "I know less than I did yesterday, and yesterday I knew less than I did the day before. I'm getting dumber as I go." And he laughed. He said, "Well, that's kind of the way it feels, doesn't it?" He's about my age. He said, "That's kind of the way it feels, doesn't it?" I said, "Well, when I think I know something, I get shown different. That there's always that next thing to learn with beekeeping. You never learn it all. And what you don't know is what will hurt you the worst." So, I'm going to talk a little bit about what's going on at this time of year in my bees. And chances are it might be going on in your hives too. I'll also talk a little bit about the things, the management that I'm beginning to do at this time of year, the reason for it, and the results I hope to get out of it. We're just about to begin pulling honey off the hives. Some years by now I've already pulled honey off the hives, but this year has been a different year. And for the last, I don't know, 10 years probably, I've made the statement that this is not a normal year. And I'm beginning to see a pattern develop here that it seems like that there is no normal year anymore. There's just another year that you have to learn to adapt to. And this year has been really wet in West Kentucky. And it was cool a little bit. We had our March in February. Then we had our February in March, which is never good because the bees begin to brood up, and that's when you lose hives. When bees begin to brood up and the queen lays some eggs down here and the food is up here, and it turns off cold, and it don't get above 35 degrees for 2 to 3 days, and you wind up becoming a good customer for the people that raise bees because you lose hives, they die. I'm not that bad at keeping bees alive up until that time of year, and there's not a lot you can do about that. I used to say that I could move my bees to where our bees are in South Mississippi. Well, this year it got that cold in South Mississippi. On the Gulf Coast, they had 8 inches of snow. They had more snow where our bees are. I mean, we're within sight of the Gulf of Mexico. They had more snow there than we did at home, which in a way, I was glad of that because that means we didn't have that much snow. But down there were people dying in the streets because people in South Mississippi, when snowflakes fall, they just croak. You know, they don't know how to deal with it. And compared to people that live in the north, we don't either, in West Kentucky. But so now I've got to quit saying that. I've got to quit saying, well, I'd just move your bees south. Yeah, good luck with that. It snowed 8 inches last year. And it stayed on. it didn't like snow, and then a day later it was gone. It stayed on for a week. My sister lives in Fort Morgan, Alabama, and I got a lot of mileage out of the joke on her. You know, she moved down there to get out of the snow. They had more snow than we did, and they don't even know what a snowplow looks like down there. So Gulf Shores and Fort Morgan just kind of shuttered the windows and closed up and decided they'd get a good body count after the snow melted. So, so what do? You get ready for winter now, because the bees are in the notion of survival beginning about this time of year. I raised several queens. I'm not a huge queen producer, but I raised several queens, maybe 1,500 a year, maybe. But the guys that work with me, they raise about 3 times that many. So I don't have to anymore. So it's very easy to see when bees change from building to surviving, to survival mode, if you're raising queens. Because when they're building, when they're in the reproduction building mindset, if a bee has a mindset, the queen cells are nice, big, long queen cells with bright colored wax. And they look like what the pictures in the book say they're supposed to look like. And then maybe the very next graft, I'll go to the cell building hive that I have set up, and the cells are shorter, sometimes quite a bit shorter, and the wax is dark. And I know right then that the bees have turned the corner. They're in survival mode. They're getting ready for winter. The reason the cells are dark is because the young bees have quit using the wax that they produce. Their wax glands have not quit working. They have quit using them. They're stealing wax from other places on the frame and in the hive, and that wax is darker. It's off brood comb, and it's darker. And the cells are shorter because, not because they haven't fed the larva and the pupa, and not because the pupa is shorter, really, or smaller. It's because they're not producing wax. They're stealing it, so they make a shorter cell. That does make slightly smaller queens coming out. They're still good queens, but the point is, the bees have recognized that daylight hours are shorter, forage has changed, the protein content of the pollen is not as good as the earlier pollen was. There's not as much nectar coming in. A lot of different factors go into it, but the main factor is daylight hours. When the bees recognize that the daylight hours have become noticeably shorter, they go into survival mode. Now, the common term for that is they become winter bees. All that means is their energy has stopped going to wax glands, and the gland that produces brood food is the hypopharyngeal gland. Their energy has stopped going to those glands and has started storing fat in their bodies, fat bodies in their body, in their abdomen mostly. And that's the time of year that we need to pay attention to what's going on in the hive. Because if they're getting ready for winter, we should follow suit. We should help them to get ready for winter. Number one thing, I try to do 2 things to get our hives through the winter alive. And the first thing is keep the queen laying as late into the fall as possible. If you can keep the queen laying as late into the fall as possible, you're going to have young bees going into the winter. Those young bees that have never been through this huge brood buildup, their hypopharyngeal glands are not worn out. They don't atrophy, and like an old bee does. And when the queen does begin laying the next spring, those young bees are ready to feed a lot of brood. And your hive will build a lot quicker in the spring if you go into winter with young bees. And young bees does not mean that they're 3 weeks old rather than 6 weeks old, because you're gonna have bees in mid-February when the queens really start beginning to make a brood nest. You're gonna have bees in there that have been alive since the 1st of November. They're way older than bees are supposed to get because they hadn't been flying. Bees die at roughly 6 weeks of age in the summer because the first 3 weeks, most of their jobs are inside the hive. The last 3 weeks, most of their jobs are outside the hive foraging. They fly until the wings get so ragged that they don't have any lift. They fly out of the hive in the morning, pick up a load of water, pick up a load of nectar, pick up a load of pollen, whatever. And they don't have enough lift to get that back to the hive. And they die from either hyperthermia or hypothermia, one or the other. Because a honeybee by itself can't control its body temperature. So that's because they've worn their wings out. When you're looking at a frame of bees, look at some bees, just for fun. Look at some bees that don't have a lot of hair on their thorax, maybe don't have a lot of hair on their abdomen, and then look at their wings. If they're old bees, their wings will just be tattered. They'll be really ragged. And you'll see what's going on, that they're old bees. Well, those bees may be 5 or 6 weeks old, but a 5 or 6 week old bee, end of January, first part of February, will still have clean wings, clean edged wings. They're young bees as far as physiologically, they're young bees. Those are the ones that you want for when the queen starts laying. They'll be able to feed the brood that she produces. If you go into, and I'm sure that if you pay attention to your bees, I'm sure that most of us have seen this. Going into the winter with old bees, queen quits laying in, say, late September, early October, and you go into the winter, you have a warm fall, a fall that just drags on, the bees keep flying. Maybe they're not bringing in a lot of good protein, good pollen. For whatever reason, the queen's not laying. So you go into winter with old bees. And in the spring, you'll look at the laying pattern of the queen, and there'll be a bunch of eggs. And you'll think, wow, this hive is going to blow up. They're going to get big quick. And the next time you look, the egg pattern's like this. And maybe the brood pattern is like this. And you look at it again in 2 weeks, and the brood pattern is like this. And you look at it again in a month, and the brood pattern is like this. It's like it's healthy looking, everything looks good, the brood pattern's solid, the queen is laying a lot of eggs, but it just never seems to expand until it slowly begins to expand. It's slow because it's depending on young bees emerging from calf brood that can feed the extra brood that the queen is producing. And those old bees are beginning to die off, so a lot of the young bees have to convert to being foragers younger than they should. So the buildup is very slow in the spring when you go into the winter with old bees. How do you keep the queen laying? Number one, don't let them stop. There's no guarantee that she will start again. If she stops laying in August, it's not a guaranteed thing that she's going to start laying again before February. So just don't let her quit laying. How do you keep her from stopping? Feed them. Keep feed out for your bees. Light syrup, really light syrup, less than 1 to 1 syrup, and pollen sub. there may be pollen coming into the hive, but if you're looking at a hive with bees flying into it and you're seeing several of them coming in with pollen on them, first inclination is, I've got a laying queen. That's good. They wouldn't have any reason to bring pollen in, more than likely, if there wasn't a laying queen. Second thing is, this is a good thing. We've got a lot of good pollen coming in. But you go out the next morning and you see a bunch of pollen pellets laying outside the hive. That pollen wasn't any good. They brought it in and said, look what we brought from the grocery. And the other bees said, well, that's terrible. You expect us to eat that stuff? There's nothing in it. Pollen in hot, dry weather desiccates, and the amino acid content just is not there. So pollen is a living thing. It's alive in the bloom. As soon as the bee removes it from the bloom, it begins dying. It begins to lessen in quality. Once they get it back to the hive, if they ferment it pretty quick, it will hold that amino acid content. It becomes bee bread. But if there's no pollen, if there's no protein in it to begin with, when it gets back to the hive, it's been hot, dry, been a drought condition. Maybe it's a poor quality pollen to begin with. All pollen's not created equal. The bees will take it out, throw it out of the hive. It'd be the same as instead of bringing a loaf of bread home, you brought styrofoam home. I mean, that's about the equivalent to us. There's nothing there that's any good for us. So just because pollen's coming in, don't take it for granted that that's going to keep the queen laying. Keep some pollen sub out. Don't put it inside the hive. Leave it out for the bees to forage. Small hive beetles really like that stuff too. So I wouldn't advise putting a pollen patty inside the hive. Dry pollen sub, what we do is take a nuke box and put dry pollen sub in it, set it on a 55-gallon drum out in the field, let the bees forage for it. It won't get wet if it rains. Got it in a nuke box. It's just a pretty good solution. It's a good, cheap pollen feeder, all-weather pollen feeder. And if the bees need it, they'll find it in a matter of minutes. I always know when, in the spring especially, when our bees are beginning to need some pollen sub out, because I get a lot of grief from my wife because her chickens can't get to the chicken feed for all the bees that are working it. So I usually give that about a week, because I hate to let my wife get too comfortable, and get the idea that she can tell me that this needs fixing and I'll just jump and go fix it. I'll wait until she's really happy that I've gone and fixed it. But I usually give it a few days and then I'll put a nuke box out with some pollen sub in it. And pollen substitute, yeah. I usually use, I don't get any commission on any of this stuff, but I use Ultra B or AP23 or as far as patties go, if you're buying a patty, the global patties are about as good as you can get. But I don't use patties very often just because of small hive beetle pressure. Something that I've been doing for the last year or so, if you are feeding the pollen substitute patty inside the hive, if you just put a patty in there, small hive beetles are pretty likely to just infest that thing. And you'll think that nothing's gone wrong with it until you break it open and it's just full of maggots, those small hive beetle larvae, which really makes me mad. I don't get mad at many things, but I get mad at stuff that I hate, and I hate small hive beetles. So I've started, and this is like most of the other ideas and things that I talk about. I didn't come up with hardly any of it. It's an idea that I stole from somebody. And this is an idea that I stole from a guy in eastern Kentucky, that he takes the pollen patties and rolls them up into what looks like about like a long cigar, lays it in between two frames. There's less surface area for the hive beetles to get into. Plus it's for some reason, hive beetles just don't seem to use that like they do a patty. I think maybe it's not in contact with the frame top where the bees can't clean them out. That might have something to do with it. Anyway, that was just a pretty good tip that I didn't tell him I was going to steal that idea from him, but I did it anyway. And it's a good idea. So if you have to use a pollen patty inside a hive, roll it up like a cigar and lay it between two frames. It works better. Yes, sir.
So once the bees stop eating heavy, is that going to help them fly and try to forage?
Once the queen stops laying, if you feed heavy, is that going to keep the bees from foraging or having to forage? Feeding heavy, meaning feeding a lot, not feeding heavy syrup, but feeding a lot. If the bees find something natural to work, they'll quit taking what you've got out there for them. There's almost no nectars in nature that can compete with a 1-to-1 sugar syrup or a 3/4-to-1 sugar syrup. The really, really attractive nectars are maybe 40%, maybe sugar. So our syrup is more than that. It's 50 at least. So the bees will, and it's rare for a nectar to be at least 40%. Most of them are in the 20s and 30s as percentages of sugar in the nectar. So there's something about natural forage that attracts bees. It's probably minerals that are in the nectar, or maybe sterols or lipids. The lipids usually come from pollen, but still, there's something about natural forage that attracts bees more so than the feeder that you're going to have feeding them. And when they quit visiting your feeder, but they're still flying out of the hive, they found something in nature that's working. If you put feed out in a community feeder and it gets covered up with bees, you know that they needed it. And I like to use community feeders, even though there is a chance of disease spread when you're using community feeders. But I'll take a chance on the disease spread to keep the queens laying. And I like to use them because, number one, it's a gauge for whether the bees actually have anything to work or not. And number two, it gives the bees a sense of foraging. I don't put it right in the bee yard. I'll put it a few hundred yards away from the bee yard. And I use most of the community feeders I use are 5-gallon buckets. And I just drill holes around that structural plastic around the top, well, what should be the top of the bucket, but I turn and put a lid on it and turn it over and let the bees forage those little pockets that will have sugar syrup in them. And they seem to build pretty good on it. They act like they feel like, I guess, really, I don't know what a bee feels like, because I try to fool myself and think that I know what they're thinking. And I get a feeling they're laughing, about that. Because this fool thinks he knows what we're thinking. But they do respond more like they're foraging when you feed out away from the hive and feed in the community feeder. Maybe that'll keep the queen laying. Once she stops, maybe it will get her started again. I can't say for sure. I mean, sometimes they do, sometimes not. About 3 years ago, probably half or more of our queens just quit laying in late summer. And I feel like it was probably my fault. I probably didn't see the signs of it coming, didn't feed enough, or whatever the reason, they quit laying. We went into the winter with a lot of old bees, and we came out of the winter with some really, really sad hives. And I nursed those bees, seemed like half of them all summer long, trying to get them to build up to suit me. And eventually most of them did. And the ones that didn't got what they deserved. So I got those out of the gene pool, you might say. And that's one way of saying it. But I'm not the guy that's going to stand before a group and say, I don't lose any bees. I'm very creative in finding ways to kill bees. But I don't do it on purpose, but sometimes, like those queens quit laying, it just kind of blindsided me that year. I didn't see it coming, it happened, and I had to deal with it, deal with the consequences. There's consequence to your action or your inaction, and that was proof of it. But it taught me something that I should have known that I didn't know. I just let it slip. So now I keep feed out. Unless there's a honey flow on, I keep feed out all the time. During a honey flow, early season honey flow, I don't keep feed out, but I've had feed out in our home yard where we raise most of our queens. I've had feed out there most of the summer, most of the spring and summer, just because there's way more bees there than need to be there. And where I live, if you got 24 hives in a yard, you got enough. And there's 130 something there. So they need some help. They need a little bit of supplemental feed, which is why I keep feed out for them. And the queens keep laying. So I made this statement earlier tonight to Tom that the lessons that you tend to not forget are the ones that are the most painful or the most expensive, either one. But each has its own pain. And so I won't forget that one, at least for a while. Keep the queen laying, feed them. Yes, sir.
In your operation, production,
Most of our income is split fairly well equal between, now my income is split fairly equally between honey sales and bee sales, selling live bees. And the queen sales, that still sounded like a West Kentucky guy was saying C-E-L-L, sales. Sales of queens, I guess. Anyway, it's a minor part of our income. Most of our queens that we raise go back into making splits and requeening hives that we have that the queens are getting raising queens and bees. Yeah, because we raise queens there that feeds the rest of our operation. We have about around 400 hives in West Kentucky and about 900 in South Mississippi. And although the South Mississippi hives, roughly half of them have moved into Kentucky for the honey flow. We have a really good honey flow July, August, and September in certain areas in West Kentucky. So we moved those up here for that because in South Mississippi, everything's done this time of year. And the queens that I raised there are fed back into the other parts. They actually, the guys that do the work, that do all the heavy lifting in the Mississippi hives, they raise a lot of queens down there too for those hives. but what they're raising, the genetics comes from our place. Because there's lots of commercial beekeepers in South Mississippi, and you just can't guarantee who your queens are going out and going on dates with down there. So, well, they're a little rebellious. That's the trouble. But we sell quite a few nukes, and we sell a lot of honey. Now the guys that do the Mississippi bees, they get a lot of their income from pollinating almonds also. They send bees to almonds in California every year. So it's kind of a multifaceted business. And it is pretty much everything in our bee business that actually works is not something that I tried to cultivate and make work. It's stuff that just fell in my lap. And I mean, I'm not proud. I'm not so proud that I can't admit that I didn't build the honey business that we have. It was pretty much just handed to me from another beekeeper that used to buy queens and bees from us. And finally, he said, "Look, I've retired from 2 jobs, and I ain't got to fish one day since I retired, and I'm done with it. And do you know somebody that would take over my grocery route?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I think I do." And he said, "Well, who is it? Send them to me." And I said, "Well, you're talking to him. So there." And he said, "Well, I thought that you'd never want to do something like that. You raise bees." I said, "That don't mean I wouldn't sell honey too." And that's turned into probably almost half of our bee business in Kentucky. All I had to do with that was just say yes. And he was very, very generous to me and turning me on to that business. So that's what we do. But we raise that many queens to filter into the other bees that we have, and we requeen hives fairly regular. Just because when a hive of bees goes into a really heavy honey flow, you're very likely to lose a good percentage of the queens, because hives will get honey bound, and they will push the queen up into the honey super. She's somewhere she should not be in the hive. She gets massacred up there, and they try to raise a queen out of nothing there. In other words, she gets superseded, and they don't have much to supersede her with. That, or the virgin comes back and there's really not any place to lay, so they supersede her too. And that's something that I didn't expect to see when I was finally in the right place at the right time with good bees, and they were in a big honey flow. And I was like, wow, I'm losing all these queens. And until we learned a little bit of how to deal with it, we'd lose 80% of the queens in a heavy honey flow. And we've learned a little bit about, we still lose several queens. So we wind up, once we get through a major honey flow, we put new queens in them. And that's just because those queens are basically burned out. When they come back from almonds, they've been through a major flow out there. We put new queens in. And when they come off of the big flows in South Mississippi, when they come back to Kentucky, we put new queens in them. And when they come off this flow in Kentucky, we put new queens in. So that means we need about 3,500 to 4,000 queens a year. Yes, ma'am.
So you mentioned there were 2 things to do: keep the queen laying. What's the second?
Keep the bees healthy. Take care of your mites. And I don't mean being nice to them and coddling them. I mean take care of them as in killing them. Keep control of your mite population. Make sure that you go into the winter, this is a time of year that you really need to be on top of it, because egg production and brood production in, from February until July, brood production is going like this. July, it kind of tips over a little. August starts going down. Varroa brood production just keeps going. So now is the time of year that you need to be concentrating on knocking your mite level down as low as possible. Whatever it takes. I mean, I hate small hive beetles, but compared to varroa mites, I mean, that don't even compare. I hate them way worse than I hate small hive beetles. I used to not hate anything until I started keeping bees. I used to be a fairly likable guy, but we'll take the honey off of our hives and immediately treat everything. We don't do mite checks until after we pull the treatment off. When we pull the mite treatment off, we'll check about 1 out of 4 hives. Our hives are on 4-way pallets. We'll check 1 hive on every pallet. And the purpose of that is we know that we've got mites. And I don't, my treatment threshold is 1. If I find 1 mite in a mite wash, I'm trying to kill him and all of his buddies or her buddies. You will never see, outside of a laboratory, you'll never see a male varroa mite. They never get out of the cell. They're left in the cells. All the varroa mites that you see are female. So I try to kill them all. I hate them that much. But after we take the honey off, we'll treat for varroa mites. The problem is our bees on the river are still making honey. This is when they start making honey. And we have to treat with something that you can use with honey superzone. So we treat with formic acid even in really hot weather. And our method of treating with formic acid is a half treatment. 1 formic propad, and on top, the brood nest is on the bottom. And we usually have at least 2 deep supers above the brood nest. And we'll put a 3rd medium or something above that with just empty frames in it. And that's where we put the pad, up at the very top. And I'm talking about hot weather like last week, like we had last week. We'll put the pad up in the top, and it almost always makes the queen quit laying, at least for a couple of days. The difference between that and her quitting laying on her own, when she starts back, she'll start back like it's April. And I don't know why that is, but it's something that we have observed over and over again, is when she starts back, she lays frames full. I guess she's just proud to still be alive, maybe. I don't know. Yes, sir. Well, the brood is on the bottom. When we move bees into a honey flow, we're breaking everything down and putting it all back together like we want it. And we have 10 frame box, all 10 frames are brood. Then we put frames of food or empty frames above that. So the brood nest, when we go into a honey flow, our brood nest is always on the bottom. We have a 2nd deep on top of that, a 3rd deep for honey storage on top of that. And I'll put a medium usually on top of that one. And it's on top of that medium where we put the formic pad. Oh no, formic is in honey anyway, just not in the concentration of the pad. 1 pad. And I'm talking about 90, 95 degree weather, Yeah, it is. You're not supposed to use it above 85 degrees, but you're also not supposed to drive 85 miles an hour on the road either. So, no, when it's that far away from the brood nest, You don't get much brood kill, but you will get a shutdown of your queen for a few days. That's actually an advantage because mark on your calendar the day you treat them, move forward 25 days and treat them with oxalic acid. And you'll get a good mite kill because if the queen quits laying 25 days later, there's no capped brood in the hive. And oxalic is very effective when there's no capped brood in the hive. It's only moderately effective when there's capped brood in the hive. So you kill all the phoretic mites, the ones that are loose in the hive. You don't kill anything under the cappings with oxalic. Formic does. It does kill under the cappings, but the oxalic is a cleanup. And we have had pretty good success. The last 4 years we've done that, and we've had pretty good success keeping control of varroa mites. Not perfect, but better than we had before. A lot better than amatraz. Mites are beginning to develop a tolerance to amatraz, which is apivar strips. They don't have a true tolerance, but you might see a little bit of mite pressure when you use the strips. And we haven't seen much mite pressure after we started using the organic acids. And thymol is a good treatment too, Apiguard. But in hot weather, Apiguard is actually at least as harsh as Formic. It'll shut the queens down and kill brood too. And if you use Apiguard, the thymol treatment, if you use that in hot weather, don't put it over the center of the brood nest. Put it in the corners. If it's in really hot weather, if you put it in the corners, it will drive the bees toward the center of the hive. If you put it in the middle, it'll drive them away from the center of the hive, and you'll have brood that'll die, and they may or may not clean it out. I had some issues with that a few years ago, and started putting it in the corners, and now it works good. You get it either. I tried using it as small as a quarter treatment, and still, if you put it right over the brood nest, got the same result. It would push the bees away from the brood nest. But I'm talking about in hot weather too. I treated in September with it 3 years ago or 4, and we had some abnormally hot weather in September, and it caused some major problems in the hives that I used, that I treated. I treated 60 hives with that, 60 with Formic, and 60 with oxalic, just to give a good example of what you could expect. And I do some things just so that I'll have something to talk about at the next year's bee school. And my intention was that I can say, if you treat exactly by the label, this is what you can expect. Well, I didn't make that speech at the bee school, because out of the 60 that I treated with thymol, 48 of them were empty because it pushed the bees off of the brood died, the bees never cleaned it out, they just left the hives. 48 out of 60. My fault. Not the fault of the thymol. The thymol did what it's supposed to do. It's just that it was 95 degrees in September. Yeah, 100% effective on 48 of them. You remove the host and you remove the pest. Yeah. So in one way, the thymol worked better than everything else. But the Formic worked well, and the oxalic actually worked well too. Treating by label. But I was educated on the thymol, and the thought came to me that the first thymol product to use in beehives is called Apilife Var, and it came in strips, about like that you broke into 4 pieces. You had 4 wafers and you put 1 in each corner. And I thought, I bet if I had done that with an Apagard, that I wouldn't have the issue. So the following year, I used Apagard. That way, worked fine. And it was hot weather too. Worked fine. Full treatment is 50. Yeah, something like that. I put it, well, all I did was open a packet and divide it in fourths. That's what I did. And put 1/4 in each corner. And it worked fine. So it's not the product, it was the applicator, me, that didn't pay attention to things that I should have been paying attention to. So thymol works. You can't use it with a honey super on though. You're not supposed to. And you can use formic or oxalic with honey supers on. So that's what we use when there's a honey flow. If there's no honey flow, we may use thymol or we might use formic. Yes, sir. HopGuard 3 is more effective than HopGuard 2, which was more effective than HopGuard 1. Not as, in my experience, not as effective as the organic acids or thymol. But you can use it with honey supers on. So HopGuard 3 may be a good tool as one of those get me over kind of things. Get me from August until October, and then I'll treat with something that works better. It may be useful for that. I've not used a lot of HopGuard 3 just because the things that we are using work well. But since you mentioned that, I do need something to talk about at the bee school next year. So I may get some HopGuard 3 and treat a few hives with it. Yes, sir. I use a spray, yeah, which is similar to a drip. I put 50 mils of oxalic on the, just spray it over the brood nest. And what that does, you're using the same amount of product on a larger number of bees. So it spreads out how it affects individual bees. When you're dripping that in between frames, you're using 50 mils, but it's only getting on a small number of bees. And if I was one of those bees, I wouldn't be happy about it. It's bound to burn. But I mean, burn, so I'm sure it burns them. So I started spraying that because I had seen commercial beekeepers in Mississippi doing that. And I got their formula, and actually their formula is the same as a dribble. It's just, I use a little pump up, I think it's a half-gallon garden sprayer that you thumb operated thing. You pump it up, and I measured how much it would spray using a beaker with increments on it, and it sprays about 10 mils per second. So you just count to 5, and as you're spraying over the brood nest, and I mean that's the hillbilly way of doing it. So I hadn't killed any yet with that. Yeah, they liked it too. Yeah.
About the new rocks and strips.
I used some of those. We put some of those on this year at our bee school for the first time. And I was originally not too pleased with the results because we did some mite checks before the bee school, and we had 0 to 3. You know, we checked probably 50 hives and had between there were several 0s, a lot of 1s, a few 2s, and a few 3s. And we used the Viroxan strips on 80 hives, and we checked them 2 weeks into the oxalic treatment, into the Viroxan treatment, and we were having 5s and 6s on most of them. The mites seemed to kind of like them, you know, and I immediately just kind of washed my hands of it and said, that's enough of that. I'm kind of a cynic about stuff anyway, because it's comfortable being a cynic. Because if things go in the toilets, you think, well, I was right. And if things don't, you're happy about it. So, but I thought, well, that's about what I figured. I didn't really think it would work that well. And we immediately went back and put Formic Pro strips on 60 out of the 80, because that's all the Formic Pro pads that we had. And we put Formic Pro pads on 60 out of the 80. But here in the last 2 weeks, I've been working through hives, and I worked through the 20 that only had Baroxan. They didn't have any mites. So I'm kind of backing up on that. I think that they work pretty good. I have no explanation for why the mite level went up and then crashed. Maybe, I mean, Baroxan strips are a slow release. Maybe they were just slower release than I was expecting. I don't know. I just know that there's no mites in the hives that had them on it. Maybe I was just lucky. I don't know. But so I'm kind of liking them right now. The new treatment that will be here pretty soon is an RNA interference treatment that you will feed to the bees. And that is probably the most promising treatment that's come out since I've been treating for varroa. You will have to keep retreating the hives, probably 2 treatments a year, maybe 3, but you feed it to the bees. And it's something that goes in the feed that will not get in the honey. It doesn't contaminate anything. And it has the potential of changing the way that we treat varroa mites. When we get to where that we can handle varroa mite pressure with something like that, that's when we'll get tropholalums. Being a cynic, you know, but I think it's a very promising treatment that's coming if it's affordable. Hadn't seen a price on it yet, but when it's available, I do care what it costs. I'm cheaper than that, but I was going to say I don't care what it costs. I'm going to use some of it. If it don't cost as much as a small car, I might get some and try it. But get a handle on your varroa mites at this time of year. Don't wait until September or October to knock your mite level down. Baroxan is, that's a good tool. HopGuard 3, that's a reasonable tool. Whatever you use, make sure you go by the label. And if you're not supposed to have honey supers, either use something else or take your supers off. We don't have much of a honey flow except in certain areas at this time of year. So it's no big deal for us to take honey supers on at this time of year. Yes, ma'am. You can use oxalic with supers on. Yep. Yep. Oxalic and formic acid are naturally found in the hive already. And it dissipates, both of them dissipate enough back down to the level that it would be found in honey anyway. Pretty quick. And pretty quick meaning like hours. Honey has this quality or characteristic to it called being hygroscopic, meaning that it absorbs and releases water. And the oxalic and the formic are made, they're water-based. So the honey will absorb it, but it releases it too. And since both items are already in the honey to begin with, it's going to level out pretty quick. The things that you gotta remove your honey supers for are thymol, Apiguard or Apolifvar, Amatraz, which is Apivar, or if you get your hands on any of it, Amaflex. Both of those are Amatraz products. Got to have your honey supers off for those. You can use Hop Guard 3, you can use oxalic, you can use formic. And oxalic includes the Baroxan strips. And the Baroxan strips are supposed to be left in the hive for 56 days. But in theory, that would give you pretty good coverage through a honey flow, in theory. But you know, I'm a cynic, so I'll take that with a grain of salt. So keep your queen laying, feed your bees, make sure she don't stop laying in the middle of August or the middle of September. If you can, keep her laying in November. That's ideal. Sometimes they don't cooperate. If they don't, then you just have to gut it out and deal with it. But at least you'll know what's going on. The next spring, when you have a hive that looks like everything is going right with it, but it just won't grow, there's nothing wrong with the bees other than being old. You might can help that by taking a frame of capped brood from another hive, a bigger hive, and putting in there and give it that big boost of young bees. You might can help it by doing that. No guarantee though. And get a handle on varroa mites. Oxalic, the Baroxan, the strips, it's once every 2 months. Vape, most of the people I know that use the vape for oxalic, it's once a week for 3 weeks. That's kind of a very basic schedule for them. But the way I use oxalic, I use formic first, shuts the queen down, hopefully. It don't always, but nearly, almost always. And then 25 days later, then use oxalic. And you don't have to do that again until, we do that in March and again in July or August, and then again, just going into winter, October. Yes, sir. I use something similar to a dribble, but I spray it on with a little hand sprayer rather than dribbling. Rather than dribbling, I spray it on. You get a better coverage by spraying it on, and it's not as harsh on the bees. Oxalic isn't really that harsh anyway, compared to formic. And it will kill mites if they're phoretic, if they're loose in the hive. It's very good at that. Any other questions? Yes, sir. European foul brood? I have quite a bit of experience with European foul brood, pretty much every spring. By the time the honey flow comes and you know you get some hot weather and honey flow, it usually settles itself out. I have treated hives that get severe in it, but you have to recognize European foul brood and differentiate between European foul brood and sac brood, because they look very similar at certain stages of sac brood, and you can misidentify it, and there's nothing you can really do for sac brood. It's a virus. It's a vertically transmitted virus, meaning that it either comes from the drone side of the mating equation or from the queen side. If the queen is infected with sac brood, you'll have big groups of sac brood larvae. If it's from the drone that is mated with a queen, then you'll just have sporadic cells of it. If it's from a drone and sporadic cells, it'll straighten itself out. If it's not, you need to croak that queen and put another one in there, a mated one that isn't going to be out flying with a bunch of infected drones. But knowing which one it is, whether European foul brood, the larvae never get past that stage. Sac brood, they'll get big and fat, they'll kind of twist up, and eventually they'll be laid out lengthwise in the cell. That's sack brood. And it's easy to misidentify, especially at early stages.
When you use gas, never chill the gas, put it on slow a different hot gas.
Have I ever chilled a formic acid pad, a formic pro pad, so it would slow the off gas into the pad? I've never done that, but I have wrapped them. They'll come wrapped in paper, and you have two choices. You leave it wrapped, and that's a slower release, or you unwrap it, and it's called a flash treatment. I've used both of those, and I've also taken a paper towel, like a blue shop towel, and wrapped it more. And that's the method that I've used to slow the release of it in really hot weather. And with Hop Guard and all of these things, always wear gloves when you're putting them in. And don't ever scratch your nose or rub your eye or touch any sensitive skin on your body. That's a no-no. I have some funny stories to tell about people that were helping me that touched the wrong places. Any other questions? So everybody show up at our house and we'll have a shindig next April. Yes, sir. Yeah, April 23, 24, and 25. I'm not that smart. Lake Barkley Beekeepers Facebook page, Barkley. It will be on there. And I don't have anything to do with the page. I mean, they might have my name on it or something, but it's not me. If you wanna get in touch with me, text me on my phone or something. It's 270-970-1307. 270-970-1307. When you're coming to our house, when you get lost, text me and I'll send somebody after you. 970-1307. But I'm pretty faithful about answering questions that anybody wants to email me, or not email, but text me. I almost never answer phone calls because I'm never in a position where I can answer a telephone. I'm either driving and in traffic and afraid for my life to begin with, or I'm in a bee yard in a bee suit and afraid for my life to begin with. But I can answer a text at 1:30 in the morning, or that you probably don't want me returning your call at that time. Well, thank you.
All right, now is the big time to draw for bottles. Does anybody need a ticket for the free 8-ounce plastic honey jars? Nope, everybody has one who wants one. Okay, Jerry, you want to pick for us? Oh, you're. All right, 687, which that's probably everybody. Yeah, 687-2462. That gentleman right there, that's a winner. Hold on. Oh. I got them all. I got them all. Pick one. 687-2436. 687-2436. There's a winner there. Kent, you get the last pick. 687-2477. All right. That's it. We got to be out of here going on close to 9. Kent will be around here to answer any questions or any of our board members. Thanks for coming.